turn my phone on to silent. Yep.
Yeah, mine's on silent. So I can see there's people joining us now. So yeah, week 13. It's quite incredible, really. Since we started this. This shows how long this pandemic's been going on. I was just looking at the stats, guys, for the flights worldwide. It's we're still way down on historic levels. I think obviously cargo numbers are holding up, but passenger numbers are still, I think, generally in Europe tracking around 20% of historic levels. So I mean, many airlines are still not really anywhere on the scale, but I think some early adopters, EasyJet, Ryanair, Wizz are all flying more. I see Amsterdam's
sadly,
numbers.
Robert, sadly that a lot of air crew are going to be laid off, going to lose their jobs because of the volume, the lack of volume of traffic.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine, a couple, they gave up their jobs and they spent over £100,000 training themselves to become pilots, and their employment prospects are now looking extremely tight. When they spent their entire savings on this training. It's but I think obviously the worst is for the poor people who have actually suffered this terrible disease, and as we know, it's still rife in a number of numbers are going. Actual numbers of COVID cases worldwide are increasing as it spreads across continents. So I mean, we've been living with it for seems like most of this year, but a lot of people have only just.
Since your conference, since the conference. Remember, Abdulaziz and I were jumping on. Yeah, we were jumping on planes to get home in time before lockdown.
Yeah, those of you that are online, just coming online now, TMS had its annual user workshop at Manchester United Old Trafford Stadium towards the end of March, wasn't it? And
10th of March.
And obviously, it was all planned before any of this terrible disease had started. And we had, I think we were looking at numbers of 150, 100, perhaps even more coming to the workshop. And then the pandemic started to impact and people's travel plans were curtailed. And obviously a number of people were not allowed to or unable to come to the UK for that meeting. And we ended up with a very good, I think we had about 60 or 70 people there, and we had a very good meeting, but it was, that was the start of it all. And of course, now it's almost unthinkable to try and organize a global seminar with people traveling across the world to meet together in the way we did just 6 months ago, or five months ago. So yes, it all remains to be seen how things are going to work out, but I don't, as I'm sure everyone's experiencing, this is still an ongoing pandemic, and it has to be. We have to organise ourselves accordingly. So we've got now 1 minute to go to the official start time. We've got a lot to go through this week. Steve Hutton, for those of you there who know Steve, is a customer, has been Airfield lighting specialist in Oman for a good period of time now, and has been very much involved with Mum's Airfield lighting equipment, and using it as part of a system of preventive maintenance to make sure the airports Steve works with are the best they can possibly be. So I'm not quite sure where we're going with the presentation. We'll be back at itchy fingers, Steve. Fingers on the button.
Yeah, just fine tuning, unfortunately. Yeah.
Right. Good. Right. Well, we're coming up. It's 2 o'clock now, and as I know, because we've had the benefit of seeing your presentation. It's a great presentation, a lot of useful information. This is all about how you actually turn all we talk about into best practice for an airfield, for a leading global airfield. So without stealing any more of Steve's thunder, I'd like to introduce Steve Hutton today, who is our lead presenter on the topic of airfield ground lighting and how the best practices are employed in the maintenance, operation and maintenance of the airfield lighting system in Muscat Airport, in Muscat International Airport. We have also today with us Keith Costel, who is the director and lead trainer at TMS Training Solutions. Tony Smith, who is a global leader, almost the father of airfield lighting, I would say, who has developed the PAPI, invented the PAPI indeed, and been responsible for developing a lot of the airfield lighting standards that we know and work to today, and has kindly agreed to join us to be on the panel today to answer your questions. And of course, Paul Smith, who will be familiar to you as the MARMS specialist, who's come to many of your airports to help you with your airfield lighting maintenance inspections. I'm Robert Shapton, Managing Director of MARMS and TMS Training Solutions. Today's seminar is a case study from Muscat International Airport, and we're very pleased and proud to have Steve Hutton with us, who will, without any further ado, take us through how they do airfield ground lighting in Muscat. So over to you, Steve.
Is it to me or to Keith?
Oh, to Keith, sorry. Keith will introduce, sorry, what a messed up already. Keith will introduce Steve with just a run through.
That's okay. That's okay, Robert. And hi, everybody. Really, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're based. And you'll see here, Steve has put up the panelists, which Robert has just presented. So maybe we'll just go straight over onto the next slide, Steve. And very, very interesting, and we'd like to congratulate Muscat International Airport because they were actually won the award for the best airport in the Middle East in 2019. And what they have done, as Robert said, is taken really the requirements, the standards, and put it into best practice. Next slide, Steve. And just to remind everybody, the whole subject we're talking about is really on the airfield side of the airport and on the airfield ground lighting, particularly commonly and internationally known as aeronautical ground lighting, but that's the wider subject. But at AGL, we were talking specifically about the lighting, so it's airfield ground lighting. And of course, we know that it's designed to support safe and efficient aircraft operations, and by providing reliable, essential visual guidance to the pilots and to the aerodrome personnel that are using the airfield, especially in reduced visibility. Next slide, Steve. And I just want to remind everyone that the way we look at the life cycle of AGL, and also particularly on the maintenance side, we look at our airfield installed equipment and how we manage that. We look at the tools, equipment, and the spares that we need to be able to manage that. And of course, to do that, we need to have documentation, procedures, but pretty clear, we've got to have people as well, eh? Competent, trained personnel. Next slide, please.
It's me now.
So, Steve, I'm going to hand it straight over to you, mate.
Thanks a lot, mate. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending, and I'd like to actually thank Jeff. So we're going to talk about a case study of Muscat International Airport, and I'd like to thank our CEO Sheikh Hayman and Abdulaziz, our airport systems manager, for allowing us to do this presentation and be able to let everybody know what we do and the whole lot. Just remember, Oman Airports actually operate 7 airports at the moment in Oman, all the civil airports. We're only talking about one of our airports, but this is basically the principle of all our airports. The first bit, what we're going to run through, the topics we're basically going to go through on this presentation, the regulator requirements. In our country here in Oman, it's CAR 139, Annex 14. That is our legal document. We're going to talk about our team. We've got a good team and we'll go about through them. Some of the AGL tools that we use, which are critical for us to be able to do our jobs. Managing the AGL maintenance and our runway plan maintenance, how we do things, which we've changed things around from the basic principle, which we started out 25, 30 years ago of asset. And the asset management system we use, the principles and how we use that to put everything together, which comes back to our documentation side later. And a big bit on this presentation you'll see is cleaning, because that's actually one of the biggest jobs we've got, is cleaning and making sure those lights are up and serviceable and up to near standards. Okay. As Keith has pointed out, I just touched on what he's mentioned. You know, the AGL there is important because it needs to be clear and it's actually visual cues. Very, very important. The cues for the pilots, making sure they see where they are on the runway. It is low vis, smoke, it can be smoke, you can have smoke coming across, low cloud. There's many reasons why you'll have this, and it's very important that the visual aids are in the right and working. As the airport operator, it's our responsibility to do that and make sure that's right there. And it's making sure the airlines and everything there is safe, so we all can travel from one place to another. Okay, Muscat Airport. This is just a outline of our Muscat Airport. We have the new runway, which was built in December, or completed in December 2015, 4,000 metres, 60 metres wide. It's a code 4F runway. So we have 747s, 800s come in on a weekly, which is cargo lux, comes in, delivers and moves on down to Mumbai. I think it comes from Dubai in. We have a resident 747-800. We have them regularly. And we also have the A380 coming in. Until the pandemic, we were getting an A380 service from Dubai, well, shortest run, coming into our service and using that. Our old runway, the original runway, which is down, the original runway is down here. This is the new runway up here. The original airport was this big. And now we grew by a large amount of time. This runway is planned. It's been converted to a taxiway at the current moment, and it will be upgraded at the moment because of the things 21, 22. So, so that's our basically the runway, and our team looks after that and our taxiways. Now let's go to compliance and all that. You'll see here, these are extracts out of the aerodrome manual. Our aerodrome manual, in there you've got to have your maintenance stuff. So because of the size and the detail of our airports, the complex things, we have a maintenance manual for all the maintenance of what we do. That is a separate document. We pull that out. We just put a brief description in the aerodrome manual, and all our detail sections are in here. This is signed by our general manager, ADL, all the people go through, and it's all signed, and the regulator goes through this. If we've got something not right, they tell us and we have to change it, and that's what we've done. So clearly here, we just a brief description. We have 24-hour, 24/7 operation, and we're just describing how we monitor in a very quick and simple way. We have our Airfield lighting control system, individual lamp control on the taxiway fittings only, not on the runway fittings. And on that, on the runway fittings, on all fittings, you've got lamp fault monitoring on the CCR. So this is basically 1, 2 lamps go out, the current slightly changed, we get an alarm come up. That will come up on the screen. On the screens here, we've got 2 screens here, which are this one's the control tower, this one's where we've got the details of the CCR. Our guys can sit from the workshop, see everything that's happening on the actual airfield. They can see that, and it's all there as well. So they can do that. We can turn CCRs on. We can change that. Tower says something. We've got a place we can monitor it and go through and do that. On the other picture slide here, turn around 90 degrees. We have a workshop where we do the overhauling. We've got our infield workshop tester where we can check the light fittings, and we make sure that the fittings are generally above 90% before we put them back in the field. The guys try to get close to 100. They'll clean it, fix it. If it's not right, it goes back on the bench, gets fixed, and then goes onto the shelf, and then eventually into our workshop vehicle. Now, we also use, just back here on the big screen here, we have our asset management system. As we've installed through the project an asset management system, which does all our infield measurements. All our assets are tagged with an RFI, so we can go up, sweep it, and we've got the details there. And also it does the workshop measurements are all into the system, so we have that information and all that data. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, our Muscat team. We have 4 AGL teams. Each of the teams are 3 to 4. They mix around depending on who's on leave and everything like that. 4 shifts, A, B, C, and D. We have 2 supervisors, and I'm very proud to say that our supervisors were technicians. Company put them through, some of them through and became engineers. They're now qualified engineers, and they've stepped into the supervisor's role. So they know exactly what everything's going on. They've got that feel, they've got a good relationship with the team, and they all work together on that. So that, as we said earlier, the team are 24/7 coverage, 12-hour shifts from 6:30 to 6:30 on a daily basis. The supervisors, they generally are in the office during the day or out in the field, but they also cover night. They step in, and through this pandemic, we've had our supervisors in there covering day shifts and different things because of lockdowns and things. And they are very versed, but they know everything that's going on with the team, and they're an integrated part of that. What our department does, or section, we look after everything under Annex 14, including the apron floodlighting. Some of the boys think that's a pain at the time, but every visual aid, we have to explain that to the regulator. So we take responsibility. That is the responsibility of our systems manager, and he delegates that down to the team. For your information, we have 5,000 taxiway centre line lights and stop bars, which are LED. That is the new. They've been put in service over the 5 years. A section came in two years ago, 2.5 years ago now. But we've got 5,000 LED taxiway, but our runway is halogen. It's a halogen runway, and the boys maintain it, and they keep it in a really good condition. It's very simple if you do the right thing. Now, we have 4 substations, so each of the teams look after a substation, and they look after all the CCRs and the circuits out of that substation. So that's how we divide the airfield up. They balance that out, and so people don't get too complacent and things. The team mix them around, and approximately every 6 months, sometimes they go longer, they will change it. So the guys are concentrating on making sure that section of theirs is right. If something goes wrong in another area, they'll go out and they'll do immediate reactive maintenance work and fix that as required. But they're responsible for it, so there's ownership there, and the guys do a really credible job on that. So here is a couple of basic philosophies which over the time I've been telling people and bases. The first one, guys, in the aviation, we have crew management system in aircraft and everything like that where you need to talk. In the aviation, there's no dumb questions. You may know what we encourage is all the guys to speak up, not to be frightened, come and talk to us and have a look and speak up about what's going on, or if they're not sure, speak up. It is really important that you've got a team with a good culture who can talk and be fine. And when something's not quite right, they'll come and talk to you or send a WhatsApp message, and we just sort of quietly deal with it. If it's a simple issue, something's not working, but we get it all done and we have rank. You shouldn't be frightened. We should be proud to be in this industry. Okay, the other thing, this is a statement which has been an inspector, when I got back to my inspector's ticket and a whole lot, whatever you do or the decision you make, be sure you'll be happy to explain it yourself to the coroner. Now, this is a saying which I've drum in to me by Byron Sutherland. Byron's an ex-AKO VAC representative, and he's also ex-CASA out of the Australian regulator, Vis Aid expert. When you sat there and you go through there, you turn around, you ask him, he says, at the end of the day, you have to be comfortable. So whatever you do, guys, you've got to be comfortable you're doing the right thing. If you're not sure, speak up. Come back to question 1. No dumb questions asked. The other thing which I commonly say, make all tasks Steve-proof or idiot-proof. Same thing. Basically, what we're doing here, make sure everybody knows what they're doing, making sure they're comfortable, and keep the task simple. Do not complicate the task, because that's where mistakes can go. You can leave FOD out there. So we try and keep everything simple and easy to go through. We discuss it, and the team will discuss things. If we're not right, we keep going through and make it simple across the board. And the one thing which is really important for all the time I've been involved in this, even in new installation, swap with a service or fitting. So swap your fitting. If it's something not right, pull it out of the ground and swap in a new one or a serviceable fitting and take it back to the workshop. Gentlemen, never open fittings out in the field. You'll see you might be in the middle of opening up and you get told to vacate. And so instead of just dropping the fitting in the ground, you're trying to put a thing. You've got a hole in there. This is, people are a bit more relaxed on the smaller airports when there's no worries. You should be doing this all the time. Swap, make it the simple task. Goes back to making it simple. Never open a fitting in the field. The other bits we've learned over the time, because we've had projects and we've had contractors and consultants in there and management, we've had to learn some core terminology, and it's important. Serviceability, yeah, it equals compliance. But we talk serviceability, that the light is serviceable and it's up and function. And the other thing we talk about is it's unserviceable. Here, it's non-compliant. In one way, it's non-compliant, but it's your fitting is not right or something's wrong and it's unserviceable. We keep it to those two, and we try and educate everybody that comes in. Just keep it to those terms. We know what it is, and we go through. Down the bottom, you'll see there's our regulation and Annex 14 on the slide. So we now have a maintenance strategy. And the maintenance strategy which we have is based on a KO and CAR 139. We all know that a light is deemed to be unserviceable when it's less than 50%. So what do we target our strategy? Generally, a lot of people will try and target about 70%. But what I've found, if you target higher, you'll actually do less work in the long term. If you keep it, because you're doing less before it gets worse, and 80%, it's generally cleaning. The biggest thing of keeping your runway serviceable is to keeping it clean. We have a number of factors. We'll just go through that in a moment, but that's what you need. Cleaning is the big bit. The electrical side is a small part, but to keep it serviceable, it's the cleaning of it. Our AGL maintenance planning. Okay, so where we come back here. The AGL preventative maintenance is based broadly on a monthly technical inspection. We're the technical guy. Our ops guys go out there and have a look if there's something in between. When we go out there, our boys are going out there and they're looking that it's technically right, running and functionally correctly on that basis. So all our services are generally across the board every month to check. We go through every calendar month, we go and check it. However, our runway and our stop bars are done on a weekly basis because they're critical pieces of the system. The pilots rely on it. So we do inspections and we record those inspections where the guys will go out and they'll go down the field and have a look. They will generally do this in their workshop vehicle. And if they do, they can stop if they're able, which we do have more these days. but they can go there, fix the light, correct it, record it in our asset management system and move on. Okay. This is all included into our maintenance manual. Okay, so our maintenance manual provides the general details of what we do, and it's all follows there. So your team's got to know what your maintenance manual is. Your regulators will ask you these questions. So you've got to make sure they're familiar with the maintenance manual and go from there. Okay, asset management system we're using records the work. It's documenting the work. So when we record the work, it's recording the date and time, which is good because you know when if something goes wrong, you know when the last person was there, or you've got an idea what it does. It provides our management with a lot of information and reports. So it all comes in together. So sitting there, planning, going out and doing your work. The other thing which we've tried to encourage our team to be as teamwork, the maintenance teams try and get all the work done by the 27th or the 28th of each month, because our supervisors have got to print a monthly report and document that up to management so they can have a look and see if there's anything we need to do. So that is all in there. The boys do that. So they get in there and Bada and Jamal will write the report and they'll cover the work orders, the tasks, the PMs for the month, everything in there. So it's all done neatly. So it's documented what has been done and where we stand. Any deficiencies we have or anything we need, it goes into there. So we use this. This is all part of the maintenance planning. So each month, they're looking each month at where we are and what we need to do. Are we right for next month or we need something? We can then talk to management. Okay, the monthly tasks. Okay, visual inspections. Okay, the boys will go out and they'll do a visual inspection. You need to go out, you drive around and have a look at it. We run 2 visual inspection types. We have a runway inspection and we also have a stop bar inspection. The runway inspection, that will go out, they run down through the approach lights, they go onto the runway, they check the PAPI and then drive down the other end. So we go from approach light to the runway end on the whole runway and we record any defects, any lights outage, anything there. They can swipe that and record it into the document. It usually takes around about 7 to 10 minutes. If there's a few issues, it'll take long. They can slip down and also do the lead on and lead off lights and record all that because they're critical. They're part of that runway. The lead off lights, you've got to get your aircraft off the runway. So those things are all sat there and they can record it and we document it. The other things we do in our monthly task is an infield measurement. So we do our infield measurements of the runway and the stop bars. We do that every month and we record that and it's documented what they are. If the service is not 100% or there is something there, the boys have got it, they'll go out and they will then correct it and then record it, it's correct. So there's a document showing, because one thing the regulator always asks us, how do you do your fix? Well, this is where you're able to demonstrate this is where we found this, it was faulty or not serviceable, and we've corrected it in 2 hours, 4 hours, 2 days, whatever the appropriate reason. So it's there. So we do that. The other thing the boys do is go and check the CCRs on a monthly basis. They open them up and they go through the units and they check the connection. Very, very important, gentlemen. Check the connection. Get your screwdriver, test the points, make sure they're tight. We had a lot of problems originally with our apron floodlighting from loose connection, poor thing. But the boys have gone there and they've gone and making sure they're tight, and we now got good connections and we don't have fire and we don't have burn-ups. That's something that always happens and it's very, very critical in your maintenance to do. Not opening a cabinet and just looking in it is not. The boys, you go in there, you watch when they're doing it, you see them going through every CCR with a screwdriver, making sure all the connections are not loose. That's important because it does save you a lot of headaches later. We do every first week of the month, installation resistance have done on all the CCRs. So they go through the circuit, we unplug the isolating switch, and they make sure it's switched off. They do the 5,000 volt test for 1 minute, and then it's recorded into our asset management system. And then at any time we can look at it and we can see the performance and the trends. As it goes on, you've got an idea. You can work out if there's seasonal issues or non-seasonal issues. It's all there. The other thing which is critical, which we've been doing for 5 years, is the talking of the inset fittings. The boys get out there. We've now changed to a digital system which records it. That's still in the process. The boys have modified the unit and put a light in there because they do most of this work at night, so they can click and do the lights. Well, that was another thing. Some of the techs have come up with some really good ideas to make things a little bit improved and make life easier. And keep it simple. It comes back to that terminology. So we keep the talk and we go through that. The runway is done every month and going down. That is what's recommended by the manufacturer, and that's what we keep doing. Now we're starting to record the documents, and we've got a little bit more feed on what's going on there. Cleaning, as I said, coming back, the big thing. This is the big job on the whole lot, is cleaning the fittings. So cleaning the fittings. Because we're in the Middle East, dust is a big problem for us. Very, very surprising. The dust builds up very easily. You build it up on our cars and everything around the place. So the boys go out and they clean everything. We have a couple of photos. The other thing is rubber. Rubber on our centre line and TDZ. And the one thing a lot of people forget is the lead-off lights. The lead-off lights get a lot of rubber build up. We've now bought a new machine to deal with that. It was being done by hand, and it looks like the results and everything, it looks a lot better now because of the mechanism we're using there with the rubber removal. The boys can go out nice and easy and do that. The other big thing, which a lot of people don't realise, is the fittings, your inset fittings, and even your elevator fittings. You'll get moisture inside the fitting, which puts a glass lens, a fogginess onto the fittings, and then you've got to clean it. So your light deteriorates. We see the light deteriorating, and you see your readings going down. If you clean the fitting, it fixes it. When I was at Sydney doing the runway there, we just swapped the heads. The elevator fitting, we just swapped, put a new head on top of it, kept the original lamp, and we put it and tested, and that was fine. We would pull them back, pull them apart, cleans the bullseye to increase your 10,000 candelas. If it's an inset fitting, we crack it open, clean the inside of the lens and the diachroic filter, and sometimes the back of the reflector, if it's a reflector lamp. Give that a clean and wipe, that builds it all up, put it back together. And in a lot of cases, your light is still serviceable. It's in a good serviceable condition. It just needs a clean. There's one particular brand, it is a big problem with them, and at mine. Yeah, somewhere around about the 12 months time, you'll have a look at it. So you can see it, have a look. Yes, you've got green light on it, but your light will deteriorate, and have a look. So that's why, another reason, you take your fitting back to the workshop. And the other thing which our boys are always looking at from a technical point is 2 lights in a row. And they're out there double checking that, and that we've got no 2 lights in a row. Our ops guys will give us a heads up if that is a case. And that does mean 2 lights in a row or across a beam of each other if it's in the TDZ. Anything out than 2 in a row, that will come up in our asset management system anyway, and the infield measurements. So we clean that and watch it. So we're out there looking. So when they're doing the inspection, they see that it's 2 lights out or one's really dim, they'll swap that fitting and make sure that we're right. So we're conscious of doing that, and we tackle that on a weekly basis. The guys are doing that on a weekly basis, or it's just less than a week because the guys are doing 4 days on, 4 days off. I think it's 2 day shifts and 2 night shifts. So they're cycling going through, but they're doing the inspection down the runway on a regular basis. It's done a couple of times actually the runway. Each shift does it, and we make sure it's covered and we're right there. The next one, tools. Gentlemen, this is a range of the basic tools you need to do the work. If you don't have this and you're working with a screwdriver, you're not going to do the job correctly. I've seen a lot of people, you get there and you have a look and they haven't got all the right tools. So we got up there in the top corner here, we got our torque wrench, we got our mega. You need to have a mega. You'd be surprised how many places don't have a mega. Okay, the most important one for everybody, a clam meter. A good clam meter so you know what the resistance, your multimeter. A workshop vehicle. This is our workshop vehicle. We'll go into detail. It's set up to do whatever. Screwdrivers. We use these screwdrivers, which I did bring from Australia. Two big long screwdrivers. Flick that on either side. The light comes up nice and easy. Very quick to remove out of it, especially if you only got a couple of minutes to change a light fitting. Up, out, and you can put them up, lift them, unplug it, and then pop them back down. All the tools we get from the manufacturers, useless. Because of the dusty environment, we use a battery-operated Makita air blower. We've recently just got the new powerful one, which seems to blow a lot more better. We're finding that's good for blowing water away and clearing ducts. So the boys have been doing that. Paintbrush, paintbrush, you can sweep that around the base of your shallow pot and the lid and get the dust there. So make sure when you're putting the fitting back in, there's no dust or anything loose, you can remove that. Rags for cleaning. Lifting bars for the pit, opening the pit. We use a Makita rattle gun to undo our fittings. It saves us time and quick. I'll show you a picture of that. And of course our lux meter for the apron flood meter lighting task. So these are some of the maintenance tools. There's our, to the right there is our AGL workshop vehicle. You'll see 1/3 of the width of the van is a workshop bench. We look at the appropriate tools. The yellow thing on the right hand side is a Karchi blower for cleaning the lights. We have a hand washing basin and the vehicle. You'll see that on the tech on the centre taxiway line there, he's undoing it. We got it on a 1.2 metre extension down, undo the nuts, undo the nets. We're conscious of the HSE and backs. Bending over and getting low there, we find this is easier, as well as the torque wrench being on the long thing. You've got to work at your staff and look at the back mechanism as well. And we have a cleaner for rubber removal. And as you can see on the other photo there, the AGL vehicle's got doors on either side of the vehicle. So we have the workshop on one, workshop and tools on one side, which is on the driver's side. And this concept is based off a vehicle that Sydney Airport has used for nearly 20 years. So it works quite well. We also have infield measurement equipment, so we can go down and measure our lights and get that information and data. So we can do that, the inset, the elevated, and with the transverse, we can run across and do quick, easy thresholds and stop bar lighting and do all that. Okay, now on to the cleaning. The cleaning, yeah, we clean, we do the approach, the runway ends, the runway centre line, the TDZs and the such. You'll see that Hitachi where with blaster, they blow and wash the signs or whatever. The guys drive around on the vehicle. They sat down instead of getting out of the vehicle, back into the car. They've developed a way of doing this and moving that around. We did follow this from our guys in Salala. This is how they were doing it. So we adopted the same through the airports. We also, we do the elevated inset fittings. We run along slowly and they do the cleaning, and we've got the rubber removal out there, cleaning the rubber off the lights. The rubber removal for the runway does not touch light fittings. They drive around it just to make sure they don't damage it and the whole lot. Our civil guys have got a little bit of fear. We're happy and we clean it so we have no issues with that. Of course, you always go reactive work and whatever. You may have to go out and fix a broken cable, low resistance or whatever. So here's the team in the old part of the airport repairing some cables where we had an issue and modification. You'll see with the AGL vehicle, it's got the cover. It gives the boys the shade over there. So if it's raining or whatever, we don't get that much rain, but it gives us shade, automatically shade, so we can get in there, and it does make a hell of a difference. Yeah, so our vehicle has got a water tank for hand washing, air compressor, submersible pump, and 240-volt inverter there. So our vehicle is used and sit there and tackle it, and we're ordering another one. So management have said we can have another one, and they're in the process. This is the other side. We have the trays where all the light fittings are stored. We keep just enough for what the boys will need so they can go out as one of the guys, foreman at Sydney Airport, used to say, at 2 a.m. in the morning, you can't go out and buy everything. So we make sure we have everything in the vehicle. The guys go out and do the job. They do it once and go back out. Prior to the pandemic, we were quite busy. We had small slots. Through the midnight, you'll be a half an hour slot. So we made sure everything's there, and we do that. This philosophy has worked us quite well. And we also, our contractor who was doing the project upgrade works, they got one as well. We made them do it. They can lock the door. The beauty there is they put the thing in, shut the door, and they can vacate. You're not worrying about tools falling out and everything. One big problem we had with contractors just throwing that in. So we made them do a workshop. So there's another concept. It's just a box on the back of the Toyota, and they just shut the door. And it's got the same principle. One side is the workshop, the other side is the drawers with their bits and pieces. And if you open up on the tray in that one, they got a big tray in there where they were carrying all their transformers. The other one is reactive maintenance. You always got to be ready for your reactive maintenance. Now, reactive maintenance can be a different things. As you can see here, we've got a damaged base. The question is, do you have a team that knows how to replace things? It's important. The company did send large guys, 8 or 10 of the guys went and they've done the coring course and they've done the slot course and they've got there. They've got their familiarization. We just recently developed this Hilti core machine where we can do the job, core it, fix it and move it out. The photo to the left, you'll see Yusuf there. We've put rags around there keeping the water, and we use the highly paid airport systems manager there, Abdulaziz. He comes out and helps as well when required, gets in and digs, but he's vacuuming up the water, so we keep the mess to the minimum. If we're working on the runway, we only have 1 hour. That's it. We've got to fix, change light fitting and make it base and safe in 1 hour. We've had a few little issues with that, but we've got that down in time. What we now have done is develop like a pilot checklist and a checklist. So we have a checklist of getting the gear out. We've got the gear getting into the car. We go through that checklist to make sure. And we got a point there. If we need to, we have to stop and we got to close it. Now the question is, what do you do if you've got a problem? Do you have cold pack to pack up the hole and seal if a fitting goes missing? What's your reactive system there? We've had to cold pack. One of those on that night, I think the one with Yusuf there, we actually had to cold pack the thing because a flight was coming in which no one forgot because it was running 7 hours late. And the ATC didn't think they had anything. They gave us clearance. So we cored the hole, fixed it, had to cold pack it, made it safe, vacated in the 7 minutes. I think we had 7-minute recall. We got off, packed it, aircraft landed safely, went to cargo, no problems. We went back out, took the stuff back out and continued and finished the job. And the other big things which you got to be, and I keep coming back to reactive maintenance, is a sign. Sign blow away. We found the sign one morning. Jamal and I are driving down doing an inspection, just checking, just visual check, the supervisor's inspection, and we find that a 747-800 cargo lux comes in about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, come in, blew the sign off for some reason. The clips on there a bit weak. If they're not adjusted or they slip after a while, that came undone. That panel was found to the side, so we had to get in there. But the beauty was we had to call the team. They were up to finishing doing another job. They took them 5 minutes. They finished that job and then brought the vehicle, and we had everything there to do the job. Luckily, this was in our runway closure. We were able to fix it, and we were fine and back in service, and everything was without any major fuss and just done completely. But that's because we organise. You need to be organised and make sure you've got that in the case. Now, one of the big things here is your team familiar on being able to do, maybe repair a PAPI or anything. What scenarios have you put in place? What have you got the case? Here you can see another sign burn damage. I think that would have been after Emirates A380. We had a few problems with that in the beginning. You get the big boys, you get a little bit more. We had a PAPI, we had an incident where a PAPI was knocked near the interchange of shift. Somebody just got explained to vacate and didn't realise where they were looking because, as you can see, that's on the shoulder, right on the edge underneath the bonnet. So it was easy. But do you have all the tools to cut the legs? Do you know? Have you sat there, gentlemen, and had a look? Are you able to do that? We were lucky on this occasion that we were able to, ATC were able to turn the runway the other direction for aircraft to land. They shortened the length of the runway so we could come out there. If it was the main bit, we would have either had to hold and divert aircraft, or they would be landing on that and it would take us a little while. But we had the two shifts. They all did it nice and easy. Went through there, had their piece. That one did the one job, one did the other job, put it all together very nicely. In around about 30 to 40 minutes, it was all done. They sat down. We had the boys sat down and they discussed it before going out. As they say, a toolbox meeting before going out, and they had a plan and a strategy to go out, and we did that, completed it, and got that sorted out. So that's important. Are your people trained, or do they know how to do these things? You know, part of this is, do you have the as-built drawings with the right length? You've got to be able to put your hands on all this stuff. Right? Moving on. What we do on a monthly basis, we go and do the photometric testing. In a KO under Chapter 10, it says, when you're looking at your maintenance plan and the whole lot, I've cut to here, you've got frequency based on your traffic density and your local pollution. They're key terminology out of those two paragraphs, which have a major effect of why you need to work in your plan. So at Muscat, we run and do it all on a monthly basis. At Sydney, when I was working there, Sydney, we used to do the centre line every 2 weeks because it was getting more aircraft movements, rubber build up on the centre line, and we found between 12 to 14 days, it would become unserviceable. So we adopted a system every 2 weeks. We would go into a service, clean it, and then photometrically test it and improve it. We were testing it at first, and then we found out it was failing all the time. We just went in, cleaned it, and then tested it, and we had that go. And we did that for 7, 8 years. That was the routine. I'm quite sure that's still the routine there, right? It puts it. The other bit when you're looking at it, which I've found using an infield maintenance system, is the inset fittings alignment will generally be okay because they're set, unless the fitting moves a little bit from pavement movement or whatever. But you generally don't have any issues with that. Elevator fittings, yes, they come out of alignment on a regular basis. But if you're using an infield measurement system, it will tell you if the alignments are out. And if you run a report regularly on a monthly basis and you just run that and you check what the alignment is from your monthly check, it will tell you if you're out of alignment or whatever. So what we've found, and the boys are here, if you use this tool, you don't have to go and go out and check every fitting, because you're getting a report that's right. And if you take the philosophy, when you touch a fitting, you do an annual service. So you look at everything. You look at the glass, you look at everything on there, nuts to air. Just do that every time you do the fitting. It will be less work and not got another task of just going out there and maintain, just doing the thing. Do the whole lot in one go until the next time you come back. If it's not sure, replace the components. You should have that in the vehicle. Go and do that. Infield measurements, gentlemen, will tell you lots of things of what's going on, and it will reduce your maintenance by a long shot. Really does. It makes it a lot simpler. I encourage you to do it on a monthly basis. One airport in Australia used to do it every 6 months. That was a big job before. They go and clean it all up, a lot of hard work, but knowing a couple of weeks later, it was going to be out of service. If you get the tool, I recommend the tool. It is worth every cent of it. Moving on, not much more to go, gentlemen. Infield measurements, okay. The other bit with the infield measurements, it will tell you a lot of information, okay. And if you look at it and you study over time, you'll do that, or you get into the right training course and people learn and put this, discuss this. This is a topic on its own. But there's a lot of different things. You've got water ingress, electrical issues, transformers. You can pick up a lot of information from your photometrics, having it clear and looking at that. So the photometric measurements is just not one thing. It's a lot more information that can be utilised. And You can identify various different things, especially when you're starting on the beginning. You will find all different things. I remember on one airport, we couldn't get good light output. We found out it was the secondary was too long. So we increased it from 2.5 millimetres squared to 4 millimetre. Problem was solved, right? We're trying to work out why. Electrical, there's a lot of things here, and you really need to know where it is. Go through the little checklist and go through. But your staff need to be trained. They'll sit there. If you don't train them properly, they won't know how to quickly address the issue. So coming back, the whole principle that we've been doing at Muscat and I follow the differential maintenance strategy. Basically, you don't know what you've got unless you measure it, right? You measure it, maintain it, monitor it, manage it, move it around in the loop. It's a circle. Just keep going around in the circle, go out there and have a look at it. And if you do it more regularly, it'll be easier. If you're doing the cleaning on the thing, I may only have 10 fittings to be cleaned if you did it every week, or it might be 20 fittings every 2 weeks. But if you're doing it every month or 6 months, every 6 months, you might be cleaning the whole lot and it becomes a big job. And no one wants to go out and do a big job. And the longer the rubber's on there, a lot harder it is to remove it. If you're removing it on a regular basis and clean, it's a lot easier. It really does. It makes a big difference. I remember when we started cleaning the centre line at Sydney, it was a horrible job. But eventually we got it down on a regular basis every 2 weeks. It was an easy job. It became easy, nice and simple. The crux of the whole system is your asset management system. So a good asset management system which pulls all of your information together in the data. With the technology today, you can bring that. It produces the reports, it demonstrates your serviceability, and it can give you justification to your management and to your regulator. It's a really key part. It effectively demonstrates the runway serviceability status, complete the history records, and both to senior management and regulatory inspectors in real time or when in demand. On a Sunday morning, Abdulaziz has a team meeting, they come in, and the first question he has is, okay, guys, how many fittings have you changed? How many things? That's all here given in this report. Bada or Jamal, whoever's giving the report, they'll give that and explain what we've got. So we've got to gauge. Are we getting on top of something? Are we getting behind on something? It gives a real thing. And we're now finding out the guys are doing things which no one actually remember. And you've got to remember, guys, the asset management system is the primary a maintenance tool. Right? It's a maintenance tool to make yourself fly. It's documented and do that. So for Muscat, which serves as a method of demonstrating operational compliance, specifically in the event of an incident or accident, but also highlights when immediate rectification action is required. It will tell you that. If you, here, this one here, this is our serviceability. It's telling us we've got a tick here. Our runway is Cat 1, Cat 2, and Cat 3. We're serviceable. All our photometry reports are fine. No problems there. Here, this one here, this is in inspections. We can have a look. Our stop bar inspection's been done. Our runway 08 left has been done. And our 26 right's been done. If there's any issues, it's been checked. We've got a record, date and time it was last inspected. That sits up here. Up here, we also have the tool by how many faulty fittings and everything like that. We use this detail, being a big bonus for us right at the moment. Get the mouse back on the second screen. So infield measurement bar chart configuration is an important thing. Typically, an asset management system demonstrates in real time the full maintenance history of all the light fittings in the system, right? And that's what and all AGL lighting circuits. So we have everything. It helps us with maintenance planning. The planning's not so much because we do it on a monthly basis. So the planning's not there. The guys need to do it. The individual teams will do it. But demonstrate the appropriate rectification action. This is the big thing. We can find out when it was done, by who, and which shift. If we have a question, we go in there. We will find out shift C, shift D, or it's Jamal, Bada, Sud, it's whoever's done it, Vasso, whoever's done it. we go through, we have an idea what's going, you can make a phone call and make it. And also at a low resistance, as you can see here, resistance chart. We can see now, what's it doing? It's getting up and down. Why? We can investigate it. This one here, this is our a chart of our faults on there. It tells you a summary of where the faults are, what we got. Yeah, we got a lot of taxiway fittings faults there on the summary there. We got maybe one out on the stop bar on the whole lot. I picked a bad one. Generally, this is not a case. If there's been a bit of a break after holidays, things might be a little bit quieter. But that's what it does. The boys all know, but it's still not serviceable. The red doesn't mean it's unserviceable. It just means we got work. So there's different bar charts into this, right? Bar chart. The top one here is, well, Robert will go on, our RVR factor. We do the tests every month. We're getting good figures across that. We clean and we have no issues. We've got a nice long factor. We do get a couple of fittings, but it does look at the overall mean average across the thing. So management says, yeah, we're doing the job, right? This report, what we're saying, this overall summary is all regulators, operation and management really need to know. But if they want more, you give them more. But this, just one picture, this is what we walk in, and Abdulaziz, we want to see this chart here. It's got all the services on the runway. The only thing that's not on here, which we do think we'd like to see, is the stop bars on there as well, because that's the critical other one which we have to produce for the regulator in chapter 10. Here we got all our things. If it's Cat 1, this is for Cat 2, we have a Cat 2 runway, it's telling us at Cat 2. If it's not, we're not getting 95, we're only getting 85 or 90, we'll get a yellowish colour, and that will tell. We know, oh, we got something there, we have a look. If there's 2 lights in a row, it'll go red. It might say 95 or 94, but it'll come up and say 2 lights in a row. It works that out. That's what I say. Keep it simple. This ink is very Steve-proof. Sorry to go there, but we keep it and we have a look at it. And every month we produce that and we have a look at it. And it's cyclic. We do this every month. Each of the servers comes through. So you'll find there'll be a day or a slip down or whatever, but we recycle through the month and each circuit is done. So if the team does it on the first week, second week, third week of the month, they choose that. But at the end of the day, this is what we're looking on by the 27th that everything's done. But the 27th and then something's not right, we get out there and chase it and fix it. Asset management tool. Okay, it reports when the boy, here they got RFDI, we scan the RFDI and it comes up and it'll report if the light's not illuminated, it's been repaired, defect. We've used this as a defect thing, recording defects against our primary supplier, because if we get a fault, we can mark it, it's a warranty issue, and we can simply print that out and it's very easy for us to document it. All right? The other thing with the kit, currently we're running on a laptop at the moment, and once we get it on the server, the boys get it on the server, you'll get access anywhere. We don't have that at the moment, but once that do, supervisors and management can get in and have a look at it, and we can maybe find the problem without having to go out. Another saving, don't need to get out on the runway, not bothering ATC. We're not going to be another runway incursion or whatever it is. Here, one of the boys has come along, stop bar. When we do the stop bar inspection, I think it was Salman and Azar said one day, why we got all these PMs for this? We go and do this week, we go and do this week. So we sat down and we came up with a new system where when they go to the stop bar, they're doing the sign, the stop bar and the runway guard lights all at that same time, and also checking the lead in light and lead off lights, and they chunk the functionality of it. All of it's done. So when we do an inspection on that earlier, click it, it's all okay and all and fine. And the last slide, gentlemen. This is a matrix which we've internally done. This is quite a little bit back there. We've gone through and we've got AGL general information, AGL standards, AGL circuits, alignment, AGL control system, Infield measurement system. LPU is the way we program our addressable units, and our high masts and our CCRs. I know more has been added to this and a whole lot. So what this done, we've gone through the issue, and we go through it with the boys, and we say, where do they feel comfortable? Where do they need to train? And this matrix can easily be given, or is given, to our training people, so they can know where to put the training in for the guys and a whole lot. Oman Airports does put a lot of money and effort in training their staff. They really do that, and it's paid off. In my opinion, it's well and truly paid off. You'll see down there, there's a gap at the bottom down there's 2 lines with no information. They're brand new techs, right? They've just come into the department and they're at a new techs, and that's what they use. So that's where we start from. So we've got that. Some of them still get ticked off, but you put that on the new boy from day one. You'll see I'm on the bottom. I'm in there as well. Abdulaziz is in there. We put everybody in the department in there, so we know where we've got the level. On the control system, I didn't need to know the nitty gritty of the control system. I need the basics of all that, because I'm not the one fixing it. So this system here is a competency at the level of a person's position. So they need to know and understand whatever, and this is what Keith has been talking, and I most probably will go on next and talk about, and that's the issue. But gentlemen, think your training is expensive, wait till you have an accident. That is true, right? The training, we put it, and I think we've benefited, and I think the benefit, and have done that, our L&D people have sat there and they sit there and look at the courses. They sat and they developed the course, and we did on apron floodlighting and how we do the measurements and the whole lot. So we have standardization. That's the other thing about your training. You get into the standardization. So thank you, gentlemen, and over to you, Keith.
Right.
Hi everyone. Yes, you know, that's why we bring in Robert now. You know, he's our course webinar moderator. So and he'll bring in the team, I think. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just if we can just get back to the our
just give it back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So so here we have, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the, Steve, in particular, for an excellent presentation, and Oman Airports for allowing Steve to do that. It's no accident that Oman Airports and Muscat have achieved such accolades, awards. It's because of a lot of hard work. They've invested in the people and the processes and the equipment, and above all, they've trained them. And the L&D department is outstanding, and that's reflected in the results you've seen presented by Steve in his presentation today. So we have a number of questions I'd like to go to the panel to. But first, just quickly, before any of you log off, just explain that next week we're having webinar 14 in our series, titled The Core Competencies of AGL Personnel. It's presented by Keith Costel, Director of Training at TMS Training Solutions. Keith, perhaps you'd like to share a few words about your presentation for next week and why it's so important.
Yeah, you know, as we started at the beginning of the webinars and at the beginning of Steve's presentation, we identify, you know, 4 blocks of AGL. The 4 blocks being what we've got installed in the field, what we have for the supporting tools, equipment, spares, etc. What we have in terms of documentation, procedures, and you know, asset management to support methods, etc., and equipment. But the key issue is that it's always the person. It's us that actually do the work. Okay? And so we need to be trained. We need to be competent. And what has been very, very lacking in the airfield ground lighting world is the standardization and the definition of competency and proficiency. Competency and proficiency of aerodrome personnel collectively, or aviation personnel collectively, has been pretty tight, pretty clear for the aircraft-related people. It has been very tight and very clear for the air traffic control people, including the nav aids persons. But for when it comes to the airfield itself, then we have always been part of facilities management. And therefore, airfield ground lighting is seen as a light. It's electrical. And if you're an electrical person, electrically trained, then you must be able to work on the airfield ground lighting. Well, we know that there's civil interface, mechanical interface, there's electrical, electronic, power, engineering involved, etc. And the technologies for the follow the green technology in the modern world means that we really have to re-look at ourselves and see whether or not the current training methods are appropriate. So we have some proposals, and we are going to implement this way, a different way of training airfield ground lighting personnel, starting with basic training, with some qualification training according to the job function, continuation training, because it's no point having training 20 years ago when the products have changed, the technologies have changed. To have continuation training, and then development. We need to have a career development path. For example, you might start as an electrician, you're going to be the supervisor, then you're going to be as a overall shift supervisor, and then get trained to engineering level, etc., etc. So basic training, qualification training, continuation training, and development training. And that is what I'm going to go through next week. And to
Thank you.
make some proposals and make some discussions, because we need ICAO and we need the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, to put this into our standards documentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Keith. We can't wait for that. So now rapidly moving on to the questions. First of all, our panelist, Tony Smith, Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society, inventor of the PAPI, as we've said before, and expert in airfield lighting. Tony, one of our attendees would like to know, what is the application of narrow beam and wide beam taxiway centerline lights?
Yeah, high intensity taxiway lighting was developed in the 1970s and early 80s to facilitate movement of aircraft, particularly low visibilities. It was seen that the only sensible way to guide aircraft in those conditions were centerline lights, and they had to have adequate intensity. And of course, once you say intensity, a small aperture in the ground, there are practical limitations on the amount of light you can generate usefully. And studies were done to see, well, what beam spreads and what intensities do we actually need to do the task of providing adequate guidance. It was fairly soon determined that if we had 200 candelas of green light, certainly for low visibility and for night operations, that would give us, in the lowest visibilities in which the aircraft would be taxiing in category 3 landing conditions, or indeed for takeoffs in not much higher than that, that would give us the number of lights. 3 lights, if you like, is the criteria. Can the pilot always see 3 lights? If so, then taxiing at speeds of, well, 30 knots in good visibilities, probably down to 10 knots in very low visibilities, would stay on the centre line, close to the centre line. The lights would appear regularly and adequately. So the straight sections, the aircraft is going to be quite near the centre line at all times, looking straight ahead. So there's a vertical beam requirement to see the furthest and the nearest lights. In azimuth, then you assume there is some displacement, but not enough. When you come to the curves, then you've got the problem that each light, if you like, the tangent to each light is actually at a different angle as you go around. So the only thing you can do and what you have to do is design a light which has a wide azimuth coverage, and you have it such that on the outside of the curve you've got equivalent to what you've got on a straight section, just a few degrees of coverage on the outside of the curve, but on the inside you want 20 more degrees, so that as you approach a curve you can see again a number of lights to see that indeed there is a curve, but also get some indication of the radius of the curve to see whether it's a very sharp turn or a gentle turn. So studies were done to determine what beam spreads you need for those azimuth cases on the curve. So basically you've got two specifications, a narrow one for the center line and a much wider one offset from the center of the fitting, if you like, depending which way the curve is. Around the late 90s, discussions of airfield surface movement guidance control, when the concept of follow the greens was promulgated and was being built in, it was realized that the lights had to be of higher intensity than 200 candelas, because you were going to be using this lighting now to not only guide but also control in high background luminance cases. And so you've got those additional, if you look in Annex 14, there's additional lighting of much higher intensity. That is there to cope with low visibility operations in bright daytime conditions.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that very comprehensive answer. So one for you, Keith, here. Mohammed would like to know, he says, dear Keith, Cat 2 serviceability is 95%, as also is Cat 1 is 85%. What about non-precision runways? Is there a serviceability requirement?
Well, fundamentally, no. It's not defined at all that way in the ICAO world. Now, bear in mind that in the FAA world, then the FAA will deal with high intensity lighting, medium intensity lighting, and low intensity lighting. But in the ICAO world, we deal with high intensity lighting, and sometimes, as Tony has explained, in some cases, then we reduce that light output according to the job, the service function, whether it be a runway related light or whether it be a taxiway related light. So the criteria in ICAO is based upon categorized operations of Cat 1, Cat 2, 3. And so Mohammed is exceedingly correct in asking that question. What I would say to Mohammed is that, as part of your civil aviation authority, then perhaps the adoption of Category 1 standards would be appropriate.
I think, Keith, I think in Australia, Keith, they have adopted Cat 1 for the low and medium intensity. I think that's the only place I'm aware that's got the regular, but yeah, you're right. ICAO does not stipulate anything under Cat 1. It's up to each country on how they do it. And I think most authorities or regulators keep it to Cat 1, and you keep it into that, you're safe.
That makes that's a good, sensible minimum, because if you've not got a minimum standard, then you could just say, well, I don't have a standard, therefore it doesn't really matter too much if I don't maintain my lights properly. I would always say, if you've got an asset, you've got to maintain it, and if you've got to maintain it, pick a sensible number, and 85% would be that sensible number for me.
I think, Paul, you're absolutely right, Paul. And I think I'd point anybody who's effectively operating a non-precision or even a non-instrument runway and lighting it. Don't forget that quote from Barr and Sullivan early on, that
yes.
What are you going to say at the subsequent court of inquiry to the coroner if you have an accident? I've been involved in accident investigations where it was a non-precision approach. It was just a night landing in low cloud with rain, and I show quite clearly that the limited amount of lighting they got on the runway was inadequate for the task.
I think, Tony, something for Mohammed is, I mean, let's just look at sadly, the recent accident in India, a tabletop runway, as it's called, you know, and the approach system that they have there was a very reduced approach system, as an example, and not a category 1 approach system in full. And one would have to say that in that particular case, that they had a simple approach system, and therefore, you know, it would be logical that they would adopt the category 1 standards of 85%.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I also think that there are all sorts of issues. Seeing some of the plates of information there, I see essentially it's a daytime operation only there. What I read, the airfield's only open sort of in daylight hours. They don't do night flights. That's what I see. That's point number 1. And point number 2, they've got a Cat 1 ILS, but they haven't got a precision approach, because I read that from the fact that the visibility information was given as the meteorological visibility, I think, of 2 miles at the time of the accident. Then to have a precision approach, you have to report RVR. You have to have an RVR measurement.
Well, this will be the subject of an investigation. I know we're going to actually offer our support, if we can at all, to the relevant authorities in that case. So thank you for that very comprehensive answer. I have a question here from Wayne, our friend Wayne, Steve, who sends his greetings to you. Says,
of course he does. How are you, Wayne?
He says, good presentation. What do you do different with maintenance during the summer months versus winter months? Do the frequency...
that's easy. We go out in a t-shirt. We go out in a t-shirt without a jumper.
Right. But do the frequencies of maintenance activities change? And what about your engineers working in summer months with high temperatures?
Well, as I explained, with one of the things in the high temperature, we do change the thing. We try and do it more at night and tackle that, or you make sure we have the AGL vehicle to give shade or whatever. But in the middle of the day, generally from 10 o'clock to about 3 o'clock, no one's out in the field unless it needs to be desperately out there. That's usually the case, and the workshop work is done in those period of time. The rest we use at the same and different. In Sydney, we had seasonal weather with the winter. You would get the seawall coming up and put salt water on the fitting. So it depends. If you're in a snowy area, England, Europe or whatever, you're going to have the cold, you've got the snow, you've got the de-icing. You just got to work in with whatever your environment is and work out the best way to go and do it. You've got to sit and look at each one of that.
Right, thank you, Steve. Vineet has got a question for you, Steve, which I think Keith might like to chip in with. And it says, how often do you renew the training for individuals? Is it only done once per person?
No, the company has been doing refresher courses. The guys, they run training courses every R&D people, training and development, run a course. Every year there is a program of courses depending on new people or whatever, but our techs do go back through refresher courses about every 2 to 3 years. They just keep recycling them through. They do pick up things. It's also a very good thing when they are doing the class, or you go and attend sections of the class, we go and sit in part of it. There's a lot of good discussions get on between that. And the beauty of us is, remember, we're 7 airports. So I've got technicians coming from all our different airports coming into one. So we have a benefit where they're all talking to each other and sharing the different. The Lala is a Cat 2. It's Cat 2 and it's a proper Cat 2 because they get the Kharif season and 3 months of wet and drizzle down there, just look like England, but down there it's the best place to get away from things. Hang on one sec.
Can I? I'll jump in there, Robert. Yeah.
Yes.
In,
Yeah, okay.
in our next week, I think we will discuss this. I think it is a very valid subject because I know I've been onto many airports globally, you know, and the guy said, "Yeah, I've done a course." I said, "When did you do that?" Oh, I said, "I did it. When was that? 15 years ago." You know, that kind of scenario. And,
Yeah, the big thing.
it's irrelevant, eh? It's irrelevant at that time. We have to move with the times. We have to put a structure in place, and we have to put a time scale. And I did infer at the beginning here, probably a 3-year cycle, dependent upon your job function, depending upon your role, a 3-year cycle for continuation or refamiliarization training may be appropriate, because I know I come from the aircraft engineering world, and I know very well if you're not working on a particular aircraft type for a period of time, you have to requalify, retrain and requalify. And it's logical that from a safety viewpoint, then we have some similar timescales built into the training criteria, timescale criteria, especially for continuation training. Eh?
Well, that will be. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say the training and the whole lot. We find with rotating the shifts, the first week everybody's trying to remember, oh, how do we do that task? Because they've gone back to a task they haven't been, and that's every 6 months. It's just stopping and having a look at it. The small things that may be just changing from one thing to another because they haven't done an elevated gate photometrics or something like that. You just got to stop and think. So the boys, when they do the change, they sit down and go through and do a bit of a think, and they do a handover, so they're all just familiar with it. That's 6 months. But the thing is, technology's changing, and it's changing in a big way. And discussions Keith and I have had this week, there's a lot of things changing. LEDs are changing, the technology's changing, so it has to be done more regular.
Right, thank you. And that'll be the subject of next week's presentation. Tony, this is an interesting question, a follow on from Vineet, who asks, in relation to this broken sign face, is there a capability to make it right with, can you fix it with make a new sign face with the right lettering, spacing, colors per the standards yourself, or do you have to keep spares of each individual face that's compliant? Because of course there are quite specific regulations regarding sign faces.
Well, the signs for...
Sorry, I was just going to say, there's no regulation that says you have to keep spares of sign faces, but I think Steve is be interested to see what you said when you actually replaced the sign. Were you able to put the sign with the right
yes,
letters on?
We have been able, and on a number of cases, been able to replace the sign or the panel. We do have some spares of the actual sign where they've done, if it's been hit by a vehicle or something on an apron or near that area, replaced. But what we do have, and this comes back to, are you ready for that reactive maintenance? We have a sign manufacturer. We just give him a phone call. He'll make the sign. He already knows the sign. When our signs get faded, because we're in a hot environment, they get faded. So every 3 to 4 years, we're replacing signs anyway from the deterioration. So they go through and they know it. We just take him out. He knows what the sizes are. You give him the letters, and they just replace it and the whole lot. We can usually have a sign replaced within 24 hours. It's generally been the case. And that goes back before I started. Sundram, who used to look after the department before, and he's been with the company 27 years, he had all this in place. It's just a phone call, simple, out the door. It's just you just got to think of what happens. You don't have it happen. You go, oh, what do I do? You just got to plan and have a think. It's a little bit of a checklist of what have we got in place. And this is why you need to get the guys talking and understanding what happens so they know exactly what happens.
Right, thank you, Steve. Now this question could probably we spend the next half an hour or a whole day talking about. often comes up in seminars and workshops. It concerns pits, and specifically the question is, what are the steps adhering in Oman and Australia to avoid, but anywhere for that matter, to avoid water entry and stagnation inside transformer housing pits?
Oh, okay. It is a bit of a problem with us. We find the easiest is to open it up and put a submersible pump. That's why we have a submersible pump. We actually have 2 submersible pumps. So you start pumping out 2. We have a bit of an issue with dealing with that, but your circuitry should be good enough to survive sitting in water. Remember that. If you've got the right connection, you seal it correctly, you put the 3M self-amalgamating tapper around there, or you put heat shrink. In Australia, to deal with the problem, the Defence Department came up with the pre-leads, 1/2 metre lead. They buy a metre lead, cut it in half with the male and female, and they would then do an inline crimp onto the primary cable and then shrink over the top and seal it. You had a flexible cable, a lot more flexible than what you have in the primary cable, and you plug that in and you put that together. Now, my only bit, there is a little bit of difference between the brands in my personal opinion, but you've got to be able to seal it, but you seal it right at the beginning. And that's
maybe I could jump in there about, we're talking about the water ingress into transformer pits, you know. Well, I mean, for example, you go to the Netherlands, you know, and you know, the Netherlands is basically, the land is lower than the water table, right? And so, you know, if you want what I would call the Rolls Royce of transformer pits, go and have a look at those in Schiphol and how effective they are in keeping the water out. However, globally, then how it depends on whether or not you have whether your primary cable between transformer pits, are they directly buried or are they in ducts? Because if you've got a pit and a duct system, then quite naturally will become part of the airfield drainage system, because the airfield are not straight and level. So you'll get the lowest part of the airfield and you'll get your pits at the lowest part of the airfield continually full of water. So even if you try and pump them out, you're going to be trying to pump water from the complete airfield. You know, so Steve is 100% correct. It's about making sure that the components and the equipment that you install, they are fit for purpose in terms of water ingress.
Yeah, just for we had this situation when we came here to do the airport. When I first got here, we had a look, and I made a joke. I was serious actually, and I went into the consultant and the engineer, and I said, "Are you going to supply us a boat to do the approach lights?" And they looked at me, and I was quite clear. I think we actually put it in a letter. Abdulaziz can confirm. And we asked for a boat, and they go, "What's for?" Well, both our approaches go through a wadi. So when they flood, we need a boat and a scuba diver to go into the pit to change the transformer. So I was being a little bit sarcastic, I suppose, but they had a look at it. So with that, when we demonstrated that to them, what they did was they moved the transformers out of the pit, and they're up on the banks on both of them. They moved to the side, and then we moved that, and all the cables through there are solid pull cables. They reshuffle that, and in one of the waddies, they went around and actually put a steel barrier around it to protect it if any trees came down and knocked it, because that one, even though there's a bridge across there, but any of the bushes, rocks or anything came down, hit it, we could lose the approach pole. But it's sitting there, and this comes back to design. You need to sit there and have a look at it and go out and look at the area and hope, oh. But our 2.6, yep, they are sitting in water. We got 3 pits, full 100% of water. We actually have to pump one pit to get into another one. So what they've done, the contractor removed all the gear, brought all the connectors to the top, and they're actually sitting above the water line, so we can get in there. Since we've done that, we fixed the resistance issue. But it was a problem with water ingress. You just got to look at each one as you go along. But you've got to have a look. And a lot of approach parts go across rivers, waddies, little creeks. You've got to think of these issues when you come through, when you're designing.
Okay, good, Steve. Thank you. One for you, Tony, coming back to regulatory matters. And this is something I think a lot of people, I've seen a lot of confusion of over the years. Mohammed is asking the difference between light serviceability and photometric performance serviceability level and limitation. So he's looking
Well,
at, you know,
the light serviceability is more than the light output. It is a function, for example, of alignment. It is that's one of the electrical supply. You know, if the correct current isn't there, those sorts of things. There's a number of reasons why the light isn't serviceable. As far as the optical element is concerned, and that's vital, of course, then you're looking at your lamp, your filter, if you've got it, if there's a color filter in there, and your lens. Are those optical components A, in the right place, and B, are they not contaminated in any way? The thing that fails most often, obviously, is the light source. And already Steve's covered that. We've covered that about, you know, don't do bulb changes in the field with inset fittings. But it is quite crucial that that light source is properly seated in the fitting, because if the filament lamp, if the filament is not in the right place, you won't get the right beam spread. So, you know, you've got to test the optics, but really what you do with a MARMS test, you test everything, and that's what in the end, what the pilot sees is a mixture of optical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering. And so that is, to my mind, the golden test really is what at the end of the day is coming out of this fitting that the pilot will see. And that includes not only the runway lighting, but the approach lighting, and very much so the PAPI.
I think Steve touched on this in his presentation. One of the important things to check with your elevated fittings is alignment. It's very easy for them to get knocked out of alignment by somebody cutting the grass, somebody walking past them and kicking them, jet blast, whatever. You know, alignment is part of that equation which makes the light serviceable.
Correct.
Right,
and a lot of it is just, some of that is just a loose connector. Robert, can I just jump in on a thing? I've just seen one question here from somebody. They're just asking about the shallow bases. If a fitting and shallow base does not belong to the different manufacturer, then which manufacturer torque should be followed? It is the base is the torque. I would follow the base manufacturer torquing because it's their stud and their nut coming down on it. But they're not moving through that too much of it, and just clarify. But I would go to the base and follow the base thing because it really doesn't matter. But the problem you've got to look at is making sure that the fit, another manufacturer's fitting does go in it, because some manufacturers are playing a little bit of game, and you've got to make sure that the head is covering over the base completely. But I would go to the base is my general rule of thumb on that one.
The thing with the torque is to apply a clamping force, and you're basically clamping the fitting in between a bolt or a stud and the base. So Steve's perfectly correct there. It's all of that force is going into the base. So if the manufacturer of the base has a specific torque setting to use, that's the one you should use.
However, the clamping force is a function of all of the component parts, and as such, that's why we would advocate you have a measurement system that allows you to measure not just that the torque value is correctly set on a periodic basis, but also the level of movement between any torque checks to determine if the torquing is required more frequently or less frequently, because the frequency will vary according to the conditions and the environment and the traffic, of course, as part of that. Specifically in the United States, if any of you want to look into this more, there's a new document called EB83 released by the FAA, which goes into great detail on the talking methodology and what is recommended in the United States, where very often all of the components are supplied by different manufacturers. The base is different from the bolts, is different from the washers, is different from the actual light fitting itself. So so that's quite a complex situation, and I know the FAA has done a great deal of work and come up with a method, a recommended method for addressing that requirement of what the correct torque should be.
Just so on that one, just Sydney did a lot of research when they had some fittings that went to Japan, and they use a Glen lock, and they went through and they solved their problem. It's a reusable nylon nut. It's not nylon, but Glen lock's got a metal spring washer on the top, and they did a lot of tests and they found that, and then they changed that all the way, and then they changed to using a wave washer with a stud going down. They found that was a lot better, and that way the nut wasn't coming off. You had more bolt coming up. If it was getting loose, you would pick it up a lot more. So they changed that. So a lot of work on this stud thing has been, but if you go out there and you torque it on a regular basis, you won't have a problem.
Okay, well, look, gentlemen, there's more questions, but we're now half an hour over time. So I'd like to wrap up at this point. I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to thank Steve, for presenting today, and Keith in particular. I know you guys spent a lot of time working the presentation. As ever, hugely grateful to Tony for your knowledge and wisdom on all matters. And so thank you, Tony, for participating today. And of course, Paul, thank you again for your contribution and knowledge and experience of working in the field, doing the job. So thanks everyone. Oh, and shouldn't forget Felicity and Richard, who have actually facilitated the back office, the administration and management, and putting together things. The materials and a copy of the video of today's presentation will be made available online on our website, as are all of the previous webinars, if you missed any. So all of that will be available probably from tomorrow, as quickly as we can get it loaded up. I'd like to thank you all for participating in our webinar today, and look forward to seeing you again same time next week. Thank you very much.
And Robert, the question and answers will be on the website. Of
course, yes. All the questions and answers will be posted along with the video of today's presentation. Thank you, and good evening to you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.